Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Hey, y'all. Happy Sunday. Hope everybody's doing well. Oh, man, it's been a week. Yeah, and time to catch up a little bit. Let's see here. First of all, let's get a little bit of unfinished or housekeeping taken care of. And first things first, as I always mention, I want to say hello to my friend Steve out there. You know him, you see him in the chat all the time. Steve runs a tidy little Keebler tree over there called Harneal Media. And he is the sponsor of Mark Lindsay CNC.com. You know, the website that hasn't been updated in about 2 years. That place, yeah. And he does a phenomenal job. So I'm here to tell you, if you are thinking about a website, you want to create a web store, you have products or services you want to sell, and you want to cut out the middleman like Etsy or any of these other third-party sites. Well, there is no better way to do that than by creating your own website and getting your products in front of people in a way that you control. And Steve does a bang up job. I can't sing his praises loud enough. So get on over to Harneal Media. There's a link in every video on this channel, and give him a try. Talk to him. He'll work with you. He'll talk with you. Do as much or as little as you would like. Very, very competitively priced, and pretty soon you'll wonder how he can get away doing it so cheap. That's Harneal Media, sponsor of MarkLindsayCNC.com. And I'm proud to call a very good friend. A little bit of unfinished business here. It was pointed out to me by somebody. Why am I flashing like that? There we go. Sorry about that. We're going to get back for just a brief second here on this whole thing about rotating a vector. And so I'll just draw a line this way here and close it. And now I want to rotate it to, let's say, what was I rotating it to? I was rotating it to 88.5. Well, if I keep the rotation center right there, it works very, very well. We'll go, nope, I want an absolute rotation of 88.5, and we'll apply it, and it works fine. Let me Control Z and undo that. Now I want to, I want to move my rotation center down to the end and click apply, and nothing happens. What I couldn't figure out was why it would, okay, let me Control Z that. Let's draw another vector here at a diagonal, say at 26 degrees. Close it, select it, and go to rotate it. This should give the first clue. It would not go, let's see, 88.5 absolute, and I click apply, and it was going way over. Now, here's what's going on. I hadn't paid any attention to this. Do you see this very faint line, gray line around that vector? That is called a bounding box. When you have let me undo it. When you select a vector that is sitting at an angle, it's not selecting the vector by itself. It's also creating an invisible box around that vector. So when we go to rotate it to an absolute angle of 88.5, for instance, and we click apply, it's rotating that bounding box. Can you see that gray box there that is not quite at 90 degrees. That's what it's rotating. It's not rotating the vector. It's rotating the bounding box. So that's why this was not a relative rotation. It was an absolute rotation, but not of the vector. It's rotating that bounding box. So basically, Control Z, if you want an angle at 88.5, you'll have to create it at 88.5, or delete that vector and draw it straight horizontal or straight vertical. Personally, I would go with straight horizontal. Then you can rotate that vector, absolute rotation, to 88.5. Well, click apply, and now that vector is sitting at 88.5 degrees. So when the vector is sitting at an angle, it creates a bounding box around that vector and rotates the bounding box to 88.5. It doesn't rotate the vector. That was the explanation for that problem. So the effect isn't really the same, AL, because if we take a vector, we've got this vector out here, and we take a vector that's already sitting at an angle, close, then rotate that to 88.5 and apply. Again, it rotated the bounding box, not the vector. But now if I select this vector and I measure it, go into my measurement tool, measure between 2 points, click down here at the bottom, then click up here at the top, we can see it's sitting at 109 degrees. Whereas this one is sitting at 88.5. So that's what was going on, and that's what I couldn't figure out. I had forgotten all about the bounding box issue. So, still no word on the bug. But now, today, what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to get into was some of the trim tools that don't get a lot of love. Let's see. John says, but is it rotating at 88.5 from the angle it was at? No, it's rotating the bounding box around the vector, that 88.5 to that 88.5. So but that's the point. At 26 degrees, if you rotated another 62.5, it will rotate the bounding box, that 62.5, but not the vector. So that's something that we're going to have to, work with. So, all right. Today I wanted to get into some of the trim tools that don't get a lot of love and don't get a lot of explanation. And those are located, we all know where the interactive trim tool is, and where the, it's the pair of scissors out here to trim vectors in one way or another. Okay, here we go. We're back on rotation for a little while. I should have saved this for the end. Let's see. 26 degree, just rotate it again to 62.5. Okay. So we'll do that. We'll draw a vector out here at 26 degrees. And let's go 26. Nope. 26 degrees. There we go. Now we're going to rotate that, 62.5. So we'll grab it. And we'll rotate it, absolute, 62.5, 62.5, apply, close, and now let's check the angle. Maybe it will work. Is it going to do that? Close, 88.547. That's close. I think that's close enough, personally. So yeah, you can take whatever you're at. Now, just let me Control Z and make sure that I did that right. Make sure that was an absolute rotation. Absolute rotation, 62.5, and I didn't have relative checked. And it rotated that bounding box to 62.5. And let's double check. I think you may have found a workaround. 88.547, that's close enough. I think that would work it. That would work it. So, all right, there's a workaround. All right. Let's see. Now I know why I always use a relative and never absolute. Well, I mean, whatever works for you. I would really suggest looking at selections that have more than a single straight line. Well, you don't have to wait for me, but feel free to try it. You don't have to wait for me. You know, try several vectors and see if that works for you. So, all right, let's see. All right. But just remember that it's rotating that bounding box around the vectors. It isn't rotating the vector itself. So, but as Brandon just pointed out, subtracting the angle it's already sitting at from the angle you want, it did work. So, okay, let's see here. Speaking of vectors and angles and stuff like that here, again, we all know about the scissors, this interactive trim tool. It's fairly self-explanatory. I will get into it a little bit here. Let's say you have a vector here, and we'll hit the space bar to accept that vector. And you have another vector here, and we'll hit the space bar to accept that. And what you want to do is you want to trim this end so that it ends right here on this vector. We take the scissors, we'll come over here and we'll just, anywhere you see that those scissors open is a vector that is over an area of a vector that can be trimmed. So we can come up here and just click on that, and it'll trim off this vector to this vector. Now, within vectors, we cannot join one vector to another at anywhere other than an end point. We can't join a vector to the center of another vector or even somewhere along the span. It has to be either the start point or the end point. Now, if I want to trim this vector to this one, I can come along and just trim down here. Now, because I have this box here checked, rejoin the trim sections automatically when the form is closed, because I have trimmed away this vector out here and this vector down here, it's going to join these two to one open vector. And I'll click close. Now when I select this out here, it selects the whole thing. And I can come into join vectors and we can see I have one open vector. So it did take those two separate vectors and joined them. Well, now if I Control Z that last cut and select them both, we can see I have two open vectors. Again, you cannot join one vector to another unless you're at a start point or an end point. So that's the most basic trim tool that most of us are familiar with. But now we have all these over here. You may or may not be familiar with the weld tool. Welding comes in real handy when you're working with, let's say, script fonts, and you want to connect letters together so that it looks like it's all one piece rather than separate letters. That's a good case for a weld tool. Let's use their diagram here, and let's go for a circle right about here. And we'll go for a rectangle. No. That shouldn't have been selected. We'll go for a rectangle. Let's just go ahead and create that. Where did it put it? Let's create whatever that says. Close. I don't see the rectangle. Where's the rectangle? I want to go with a square, 3.6, 3.6. We'll create it. There we go. All right. But now I want a little bit of an overlap here. And I want to weld these two together. Well, what I can do, I can take the scissors and I can trim that away. What happened? How come I've got more than one? Somehow I ended up with more than one circle out here. Okay. Let me clean up my mess here. There. All right. Now I can take my scissors out here and I can trim those away. And that's real easy. And it's already joined. Or close, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. Or I can just select them both and weld them. And that will do all of that for me with one click. Okay. That's, again, whoops, Control Z. That's pretty useful when you're talking about using script fonts to attach them all together so that it's one continuous piece and not a bunch of letters connecting, laying over the top of one another. And that's fairly common. But we have 3 other trim tools that are not very common. And that is subtract and overlap. Now, I'll get into those in a second because I wanted to go to another one that I have found very useful, and that is trim selected objects to the last selected object. So for that, let's play around a little bit here, and I'm going to do a start right there. And for my next point, I want an angle of 45 degrees, and I want the length to be 4 inches long. And I'll add, so I've got my line here. It's a 4-inch line at 45 degrees. Now I want to copy that on a linear array. So I'll select it and come over here to Array Copy. I want 1 row in Y, but I want 10 columns in X. I want 10 lines across. And I'm going to go with an offset of a 1/2 inch. So 0.5 and 0.5. Actually, I don't need anything in the Y, but this'll work. and I want to group the copies just for this demonstration. Now I'll back out and I'll copy. So now I have 10 lines spaced a ½ inch apart. I'll close that. Now I want to copy these. I want to make a copy of this group, flip the other direction. So I'll come over here to my mirror tool, and I don't want to flip it about the job center. Yes, I do. Let me close this first, and I'll select these, and let me center that up. There we go. Now I do want to flip it about the job center. Nope, not rotate, mirror. Wrong one. There we go. I want to flip it about the job center. I want to create a mirrored copy, and we'll just flip horizontal. Close that. So now I have this crosshatch pattern here. Now let's take my measure tool, and I'm going to come up here, start right there, and I'm going to come straight down. What is my measurement there? 2.82 inches. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to make a 2 3/4 inch circle right in the center. So we'll go over here to my draw a circle tool, and I will go, I wanted X0, Y0, and I want it to be, what did I say, 2.5, 2.5. And I'll create that circle. Now what I want to do is I want to trim all of these vectors away outside here. But I want these vectors left inside the circle. So what I'll do first of all is I'm going to select both of these groups, and I'm going to ungroup them so that I have separate vectors. Now I'll select everything, hold down Shift and deselect that circle. I want to do that simply because I want that circle to be the last vector I select. Now I'll hold down Shift and I'll select that circle again, and I'll come over here to this second icon right next to the trim tool. And I'm going to click that. Now I have a choice. I'm trimming all of these objects to this boundary. I can either clear everything outside of the boundary, which is what I want to do, or I can clear inside the boundary. And I want it to refit the curves after clipping. Okay, so I'm going to clear outside the boundary, and I'll click clear, and it trimmed all of those vectors to this outside boundary. It's a one-click solution. This is a very easy way of adding a little bit of detail when okay, AL Peleg is asking, won't it work when they are grouped? Well, let's find out. Let's see if it will work. So I'll Control Z. Let's go back over here. Control Z the trim, Control Z the ungroup. So now I have these two grouped. See, I normally don't work with grouped vectors. I'll hold down Shift, and now let's go look. We'll clear the outside boundary. What the refit curves after clipping is if any of this is joined, it will refit that join and make sure that it is joined after the clip. So for instance, if these were joined squares, after they are trimmed to this vector, like right here, let's focus right here. If this was a joined square, after the trim, it would project the vector along this to join this to make this a complete closed vector. That's what the refit is. So let's see if this will work. And it did work. It automatically ungrouped them. And again, you can tell that simply because they're dashed lines, they're not solid pink lines. So now if I want to group those, I can go ahead and tap the letter G on my keyboard, and now they are grouped. So if I click off, I can come back and select just one. And it selects all of these vectors. Generally, I don't like to work with grouped vectors because there are some things that can't be, some actions that can't be performed on groups, right? For instance, just a simple for instance, if I'm looking for open vectors and I come up here to selection, select all open vectors. Oh, okay. It did it in the group. It did do it in the group. Wow. That used to be a big thing. If you selected all open vectors and it was in a group, it would tell you there were no open vectors. Evidently, they have since changed that. So now it will tell you when you have open vectors within a group. So, okay, so that's no longer relevant. That's good to know. That must have been a very recent change. So, um, yeah, that would look good. It's also a way of giving you a little bit of texture within text. So, for instance, I could forget the circle. Let's go back. Make sure that let's go back to where we have those, and let's get rid of the circle, and we'll come up here to text. Let my font list load, and I've got an extensive font list. Let's go with Market. What the heck? And I'm just going to put my initial out there, capital M, close, and now I'm going to resize that. Bring that down. Oh, nope. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Bring that down inside. Yeah, there we are. And now it's a little bit too big. It's going outside of our cross hatching. And we'll center that up in the middle. That looks okay. It's got everything all set. So now I can select these, hold down Shift, and I can trim everything outside of that, refit curves after clipping, and clear. So now I could come along with, say, 15-degree V-bit and clip and carve very shallow and have that little extra detail within that letter M. So. Okay. So that's just one example. Let's see. Now we have the subtract. Let's play around with that a little bit. Let's delete that. We don't need that anymore. And I'll zoom back out here. Let's say for giggles, I'm going to do overlap first, because when I go to do subtract, I'm actually going to design a piece that I will be cutting. Not today, not on the live stream, but I will be cutting it eventually. The overlap. Let's say you have a you want to create a circle out here that is 4 inches in diameter. Create. But now you want to split this into 4 quadrants. It's easy to come along here and draw a vector, spacebar to accept that line, come over here and clip and spacebar. But you have a drawing of 2 vectors within a circle, but that's not making this into 4 separate vectors. Now, yes, you could set up some different layers and copy the circle and these crossed vectors onto those 4 separate layers and then do a lot of trimming and what have you and have your 4 quadrants. But there's an easier way to do that, and it's all on one layer. And it's simply going to be keep an overlap of these vectors. So if we want, say, a 4-inch diameter circle, we come over here and we'll make a 2-inch by 2-inch square. And I'm going to put this corner. No, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. On my 0, 0, I'm going to put this corner right here on my X0, Y0. Square corners, 2-inch by 2-inch. And I'm going to create that square. So I have a 2-inch square right there. Now close it. Now I'm going to create a circle on the center point on my X0, Y0, and I want to make the diameter of that 2 inches as well. And we'll create it. Now, what I need to do, no, I just messed that up. Let's back out of there, delete. I had this, yes, that's the one. There we go. All right. So I've created a 4-inch circle. Excuse me. They said there'd be no math. They lied. Okay, so what I have is I have an overlap. I have a 2-inch square and I have a 4-inch diameter circle. This 2-inch square represents 1 quadrant of that circle. Well, now where these two overlap, this area right here, that's the quadrant I want to keep. So I'll just select both of those vectors, come down here to keep an overlap of the selected vectors, click on that, and there's my first quadrant made. So now all I need to do is select it and mirror it. I'll want to flip about the job center, create a mirrored copy, flip horizontal, and now I have half of my circle, select them both, no changes to my settings, flip vertical, and there is my 4-inch diameter circle split into 4 quadrants. Venn diagrams for everyone in vectors, no less. Yeah, well, there you go. You know, but it's a simple way of, let's say you wanted to V-carve this quadrant and that quadrant, and make these an epoxy fill in blue. So you have this color, or you have this one, and you could V-carve these to a flat depth of 1/8 of an inch or about 3 millimeters. and pour those blue. Then you could select this vector, hold down shift, select this vector, and V-carve those down to about 1/8 of an inch and pour them white. Then you could select all of the vectors, put a 30-degree V-bit in it, and have it cut down on a profile toolpath to about a 1/16 of an inch deep, 1.5 millimeters, carving on the vector, and pour that black. And you would have a BMW insignia. So there's that. It's an easy way of using the overlaps to create a quadrant of a circle. And it doesn't have to be a quadrant. But if you were attempting to do something like that, it would save a lot of making extra layers. Now, personally, I would put these all on separate layers, or maybe the two that I was going to carve blue, I would put those on a separate layer from the ones I was going to do white. But that's where we just get into organization. It's making the separate vectors without having to go in and do a lot of unnecessary trimming. Now, when it comes to the subtract, it's also a very simple operation to do. But I've decided that what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually design a pattern. I'm going to create a tool. You probably can't see, but back on the CNC router, because they're both white, I have a 20-inch by 20-inch piece of 1/2-inch thick HDPE. So about a 12-millimeter thick piece of HDPE plastic that is 20 inches square. It's about 508 millimeters square and about 12 millimeters thick. Now, what I want to do is I want to make a caddy that'll fit down inside of my pressure pot. Now, I've got this big old 10-gallon pressure pot that is the top opening is 17 3/4 inches, which is, let's see, 17.75. That's about 450, not quite 451 millimeters wide. And what I'm going to need to do is I've got this silicone mold for a dish I'm going to make. Well, there's no way I'm going to fill this up with resin and things that I want embedded in that and put that down into the pressure pot without spilling 90% of it. So I want to make a tray out of this HDPE that I can just drop down inside of the pressure pot and let it do its thing. Well, the mouth of this pressure pot, as I said, 17 3/4 inches diameter, or about 400, just under 451 millimeters. So I'm going to make it 17 5/8 inch diameter, which is about 447 millimeters in diameter. So what I'll end up doing is come out here, and I want to lock it in the center. I'll go 17.625, and I'll create that circle. Well, now put it in the pressure pot, then pour the epoxy into it. that is the perfect setup for an accident to happen, because if I happen to accidentally spill, now I've got an epoxy mess in my pressure pot that I need to clean out before it starts curing, while the other is starting to cure. Look, if I can make a mistake like that, trust me, I will. Not only that, but the bottom of the pressure pot is not perfectly flat. It's slightly concave, just slightly. So I want this to sit nice and flat and have a stable platform to rest on. So I'm going to make this caddy. So I have a 17 and 5/8 inch diameter circle here. What I want to do, this is all well and good, but I need to have a way to carry it. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and make some cutouts up here and down here where I can drill into the edge after I make these cutouts and use a quarter, thread those holes and put some 1/4 inch machine screws in there with some sort of a strap material, a plastic strap to use as two handles. So I want to place two cutouts on each side. So I'm going to go ahead and pull some guides over here. So I'll come off here into my ruler and just click and drag a guide over to the edge of the circle. And then I'm going to right click on that guide, and I want to, its current position 8.8125. I want to add 2 inches to that. I want this guide to move 2 inches in from where it is right now. So right here under new position, I'll click in that box and make sure my cursor is after the last number. And I'll say +2 equals, and it gives me a new position, and I'll click apply. So that guide has moved, I'll close this, that guide has moved 2 inches in to the right. It's a positive number because it's moving to the right. Similarly, I want to come down here and put a guide right there. I'll right click that guide. And now I want to move in the negative direction. So I'll do the same thing, except I'll say -2 equals. It gives me a new position, and I'll click apply, close. And now I have a guide 2 inches in from this end and 2 inches in from this side. So now I'm going to draw a rectangle. I want to anchor it at this point, the top left corner. I want to make it 2 inches by 2 inches. And I'm going to click right there. Now that just clicked. That may be, that's too much. That's too much, I think, or not enough rather. No, I don't think I like that. I don't think I like that. I don't need much more than 2 inches, however. So maybe I didn't need those guides. Let me drag it out towards that way. That's not enough. Let me move it to where my center is on that guide. And my center, that's not enough. I think that's about right. So I didn't need those guides after all. Let me scoot this over so that it just about splits. There we go. That's about right there. So let me delete that guide. I didn't need those guides. Delete. Okay. Now I made that square with square corners, but now I want to fillet this corner because I want a nice radius here. Now I'm going to be cutting this out with a 1/4 inch bit, but I want to, no, I want to go ahead and put a 1/4 inch fillet. So let me go ahead and change the radius of my tool to a 1/4 inch. Where'd the 8 come from? Must have hit 2 buttons at once. I want a normal fillet. And I'll come down here and do that. All right. I got something bothering me here. Yeah, that's what I thought. Let's scoot. Come on, scoot. And that's fine. Okay. So now I've got that one rounded corner. I've got my circle. I've got my square. So now what I want to do is I want to subtract this from this. And I'll come over here and nope, that's the wrong way. I want to select my circle and I want to subtract the square from it. So select my circle, then select my square, then come over and click subtract, and there we go. So that's the first one, and this is what happens when I go live. I need to Control Z that because I need one on each corner. So let me create a mirror copy, flip about job center, flip horizontal. There's one there. Select them both, flip vertical. Now I have 2 down there. Now I can subtract. Now, the instructions on the subtract tool are specific. I can't select the circle, then select all of these squares. What I can do is select the circle, then subtract the square from it, subtract. Then I have to select this square and subtract from it. Then hold down Shift, select that square and subtract from it. Hold down Shift and subtract from it. Now I have my 4 cutouts. Now, Eyal is saying, why not weld it and have it all one piece? That is one piece. That is one closed vector. It is one closed vector. Now, to your point, however, let's Control Z all of those. Now let's select everything and let's weld. That's why. That's why. It doesn't know what you want to weld. It doesn't subtract the one from the other. It groups them together based on the outside. So we'll Control Z. And now let's see. Why not drill 4 holes and put dowels in it for handles? Because then I've got to somehow attach the dowels to the HDPE. And I don't know if you've ever tried to glue anything to HDPE. Doesn't work. And I don't have a flat bottom. So let's see. No, I wasn't trying to add them, Eyal. I was trying to subtract them. Yeah. Now, the suggestions there to group all 4. And we'll grab this one and that one. Let's group them. And we'll take this circle hold down Shift and select the group, and we'll go down here to subtract, and it does work. Okay, you can subtract the group. All right. Now, let's see, do we still have one closed vector? We do. Okay, so you have one closed vector. Yes. So yes, that will work, guys. Great. So now what I can do is I can cut this out, go over, and we'll just select that, do a profile toolpath. I want to cut all the way through, Z equals, and I want to use a 1/4 inch end mill. And I'll select that. I want to cut to the outside. For this, I'm not going to do a separate last pass. I will add tabs, but not for this demonstration. For this demonstration, I'm not going to add the tabs. Won't use any ramps or leads or anything. And I'll just call this profile cut out. Calculate, and I'm going to change my material. Well, no, I'll go ahead and leave it that just so you can see it. I'm not going to play around with it. I was going to make it all white, but no, not going to worry about it. Now that'll cut that out, and now I have a tray, a caddy. And what I can do is come over here and drill a hole, tap it, drill another hole right here, tap it, and then screw my plastic strap into the edges and hold on to it. Maybe cut small grooves to put in nuts for the screws. Not necessary. Really not necessary. I don't think. I've never seen them with threaded inserts. I've never seen them with any kind of nuts or bolts. It's basically, you'll see it when I actually do it. But basically put is just going to be a platform for me to put large molds on here and be able to drop those molds. And they won't be going far. I'll be doing the actual pour up here. I'll pour it on the CNC sitting on that caddy, then drop it down inside. And then, so it's not going to move very far. But I don't think it's going to be all that necessary to use nuts. I did consider it. Cut a small groove down in there to put a square nut inside and then be able to screw. I just don't think it'll be all that necessary because it's not going to be, it's not going to be holding that much weight. So grooves might be an alternative for people that can't thread the hole. If you're using a machine screw, it may thread itself. It may not. But I do have 1/4 inch 20 thread per inch taps. So, but yeah, your point is well taken, AL. Your point is well taken. There are people that don't want to thread plastic, and that's well and good. You certainly could cut a small groove in there, just enough to press a square nut down inside of it. And I would use a square nut. I don't know that I would use a normal hex because it's just enough to where the plastic could deform enough to let that nut spin. So I would probably go with the square nut. You just have a larger surface area against the ends of that slot that you're talking about, the grooves. So, yeah. But basically put, that's about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this file. And let's see, I'll put it on my D drive and I'll put it on demo CNC files, and I will call it my resin caddy, resin mold caddy. There. And there we are. Got my toolpath calculated. It's going to be real easy to do. So, are there any questions about any of the trim tools? There are a lot of videos out there that will discuss the interactive trim tool, and a lot more that will discuss the weld tools. My whole purpose for doing this was to answer two questions I got via email that were asking me specifically about the overlap and about the subtract. The overlap was for that specific instance where you want 4 separate quadrants. Is there an easier way of doing it than making 4 different layers, copying everything and trying to remember what you're trimming to what? Now, yes, there is an easier way. So are there any questions at all? Let's see. It's not my idea. My 3D printer is all built based on nuts and grooves like this. Yeah, my first CNC router was exactly that as well. It was cross dowels, which are basically round dowels that, well, I don't think I have any floating around here. No, I don't. Basically, you drill a hole into the surface of a panel, then you drill an edge hole until they join, and you drop that cross dowel in, and you can put a bolt in. That's how it's held together. That and T-nuts. It is viable. It does work. Works very well, as a matter of fact. The clamp on my Gatton CNC, that's what I did as well. Where it clamped the router, it was a plywood clamp. I drilled a hole through the edge into the other end of the clamp, and at that other end was a slot. Dropped a square nut down in that and used a 1/4-inch bolt into that square nut, and that clamped around the router. It worked. So Steve is asking, will the handles buckle the edge of your caddy? It shouldn't. It shouldn't, because I plan on using a flexible plastic. Let me look for and this is I know he sells these. Let me find it here. Not the. Oh, come on. There we go. And it's not a very good picture. But there's where I'm getting the idea from. This is a mold carrier, and you see the flexible plastic handle. Now here's a square. It looks similar to that, and that's the type of handle that I'm talking about. Flexible enough that it will give when I go to pick it up, but rigid enough to where it won't flop into the mold when I let go of it. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry. Not sharing. Something like that. Um, the flexible plastic that is rigid enough to not flop into the mold when it's full of resin, but flexible enough to where if I pick it up, it there's a little bit of give to it. So if I pick it up unevenly, gravity will take care of everything else. And for those who are wondering, this is Northside Custom Crafts, Jake Thompson, good guy. He makes a lot of products for folks who make pen blanks and what have you. He makes his own molds. He sells his own molds, just all kinds of stuff. So northsidecustomcrafts.com is his website. I'll go ahead and put a link to Northside Custom Crafts down in the description here as soon as we're finished live. If you'd rather just buy one, then great. But if you're going to be doing any kind of casting like this, it's a heck of a lot easier to drop this down inside the pressure pot than try to mix and pour into the pressure pot, spill everything all over the place there, or try to manhandle a heavy mold and not spill anything, dropping it into your pressure pot. So that's where I got the idea from. And as you can see, that's exactly what he does. He drills and threads the HDPE and uses 1/4 inch machine screws. So that's about it on that score. We had a couple of questions over here. Michael Hall wants to know what's the easiest way to extend a line an exact amount or trim it an exact amount. Let's see here. We have a line. Boom. All right. If you want to extend a line the exact amount or trim it an exact amount, let's say we've got a line here. I don't even know how big it is, but I want it to be 3 inches long. I'll just come up here to resize and make it 3 inches long. It's now 3 inches long. If I want to extend this line another 2 inches that way, selected, I'll go back into set selected object size. My width, I'll say +2 equals and click apply. Now, you'll notice I've been doing this from the center. Let's say I want to trim this line. I want to trim this end of the line, but I want that point to stay where it is. I want to trim it by 1.5 inches. So I want to subtract 1.5 inches, but I want that point to stay there. I'll select it and I'll anchor it on the left side. Doesn't matter if it's the top or bottom, just on the left side. And I'll go minus 1.5 equals, then I'll click apply. And I've just trimmed that line down to an exact size. So you can extend or trim a line by just getting in and resizing it and anchoring it if you need one end to stay put or the center to stay put, either or. Not sharing again. I apologize for that. Wow, I thought I was still sharing. I apologize. Sorry, guys. Let me go through that again. So I have my line, and I don't even know how big it is. I want to extend this line by 2 inches. So I'll just select it, come over here to resize, and I'll come up here into my width. Now, if I want it to be anchored by the center of this line, I'll just click the center up here with my anchor point. Okay. If I need this end to stay put, I'll select either the bottom left or the top left. It doesn't matter if it's the top or bottom because there is no height in Y. It's a vector. It's a single vector. There is no height in Y. All there is a width in X. So if I just anchor the left side, this point is going to stay where it is. And I want to extend it by 2 inches. So I'll click in the width in X blank and make sure my cursor is flashing after the last digit. And I'll click plus 2.0 equals. And it gives me my new length. And I'll click apply. And it extended that line off to the right, but this point stayed put. Now, everything is fine, but I discover I need to trim a 1/2 inch off of this line from this side. So I'll select it again. It remembers my last anchor point was the bottom left. I'll select the top left. What the heck? And I want it to be a 1/2 inch shorter. So again, I'll click in my width and X minus 0.5 equals, click apply, and I have just trimmed it. Now, if I want to make it a specific length, I'll go back into set selected object size, and it doesn't matter if the endpoints move. I'll just click the center to keep it right there in place. And I'll set it to I want it to be 3.5 inches long. 3.5. Click apply, and there it is. So that's trimming, that's extending, and that's resizing in total. So I hope that answers that, Michael Hall. I hope that answers that. Vortex 8 asks, what time is the members only live stream on Monday? Also, is it done on Zoom or something like that so you can see everyone? Members only live streams are Mondays at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. If you become a channel member and you go to my community tab here on my YouTube page, you'll find a link to it. It is done through StreamYard. So there is a panel of members, and that's all explained when you click that join button, and that video pops up. That will explain all about that. Okay. So basically Monday, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. And then there is no time limit. We'll go until you guys get sick and tired of me. So let's see here. Ayal is asking, is it just pressure or is it heat based like when cooking? No, it is not heat based. It is just pressure. The reason for a pressure pot is to compress any bubbles in the resin to the point to where you cannot see them. It compresses them so small. The liquid will not compress, the air will. It compresses them to where they're no longer visible, and then the epoxy cures. then when you release the pressure, the air has nowhere to go. It can't, that bubble can't expand. There's no heat involved with the pot itself. The curing process, the epoxy curing process, does create heat. So it's simple pressure. It is a special pot. Let me, don't know if you can see it. Probably not. I'll put it up on my CNC next week, but this is a heavy son of a gun. I got to tell you, the shipping weight on it was 76 pounds. So this is not a rinky-dink piece of equipment. So no, it just uses air pressure, and your working air pressure is 55 pounds per square inch. So let me see, what would that be in bar? 55 psi in bar. That'd be about 3.8 bar is the pressure that you put on it. Some of them, yes. If it's a large bubble, it will rise to the top and pop. But smaller bubbles, it just compresses them to where they're not visible. So, okay, PSI is okay here. Okay, others may not. So, the 55 PSI is the working pressure. Some folks prefer 60, which is 4.1 bar. So, but anywhere between 4.1 and 3.8 bar is about the normal working pressure. The max pressure for this pot is 80 psi, but I've got the pop-off valve, the safety valve, set to 65. So if it gets above 65, that vent valve will open up. So, yeah, and there will be more videos on that. So yeah. It is. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's quite a bit of pressure. So, it's used just to make sure you don't have any air bubbles in your casting. So, I will be doing a video when I do this large casting. Right now, I'm just getting everything together, and unfortunately, it's now winter, so I've got to keep a constant temperature ideally above 72 out here. That would cost me a fortune in electricity, so it's probably not going to happen until probably this summer is when I'll get this casting done. But I'm going to be making all of the getting everything ready for it. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this. We'll pick up where we left off next week. I hope I answered everybody's questions about the trim tools. Get in and play with them. Again, it's a Windows program, and much like anything else that has to do with Windows, there are many, many ways of doing the exact same thing. If you're most comfortable using the interactive trim tool, the scissors, then that's fine. Go right on ahead and use those. If you're most comfortable with using the weld tool, then by all means, get in ahead and use that weld tool. Just know that you have other options, and there are other ways of getting the same things done. That trim the selected objects to the last selected objects doesn't get a whole heck of a lot of love. And that comes in real handy when you're trying to put, say, text over a pattern to make like a monogram or something like that. It comes in real handy because you just select and off you go. And it does all the hard work for you. So next week, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Um, don't have any brilliant ideas just yet. So do me a favor, leave a comment after we're done live here. Leave a comment. Let me know what you want to see. I don't know what I want to do just yet. Channel members, tomorrow we've got a lot of catching up to do. There's some pretty cool things coming down the pike. Uh, Check the community tab here on my YouTube channel for the link to tomorrow's members only live Q&A, live stream. And there's some cool stuff coming down the pike. Let's see. I think that's everything, other than to say, if you hang with us after I am done live, we're going to go automatically over to my friend John Cousins' YouTube, his live stream, where he's going to be demonstrating he's got an alternative to epoxy when it comes to infilling and making epoxy inlays. He uses, believe it or not, melted crayons, which is a very, very cool alternative. Melts the crayons within these recesses, lets everything cool off, and then covers it with polyurethane so the crayon doesn't melt out of there. It works. He's in the process of doing a couple of Christmas presents for his grandkids, and we're going to automatically go over there. I'll be joining too. So for everybody else, if you don't join us over there, hope to see you next week. Members, I hope to see y'all tomorrow. And I think that's it. So I'll say, y'all take care. Get out in the shop, make some chips. You got a little bit of time left. It's our Super Bowl season. We build up all year long for Christmas, and it's here. It's here. So, see you next week. Y'all take care.